Welcome children. Today we will start with chapter 5 of geography for standard 9th, natural vegetation and wildlife, and this is the first part of the lesson. Children, have you observed the types of trees, bushes, grasses and birds in the fields and parks in and around your home and your school? Are they similar or there are variations? Yes, there are variations. India being a vast country, you can imagine the types of biodiversity that is available throughout the country. We have different animal species and plants. Our country, India, you know where India is? Yes, here this you can see is one of the 12 mega biodiversity countries of the world. So you can see these are all the mega diversities, various kinds of plants and animals we find in India. Okay. India occupies the 10th place in the world and 4th in Asia in plant diversity. Now children, there are about 47,000 plant species which we find in India, and that is why India occupies the 10th place in the world and 4th place in Asia due to this plant diversity. We have different kinds of plants. How many? 47,000. Now there are about 15,000 flowering plants in India, and you can see the variety of plants. There are about 15,000 flowering plants in India, which account for 6% in the world's total number of flowering plants. Our country, India, has many non-flowering plants such as ferns, algae and fungi. Now, India also has approximately 90,000 varieties of different species of animals. Children, India also has a rich variety of fish in the fresh waters like in the rivers as well as in the marine waters, that is the oceans and seas. So let's recap the biodiversity of India. India is one of the 12 mega biodiversity countries. We have 47,000 plant species, different kinds of species. We are 10th place in the world and 4th in Asia. There are about 15,000 flowering plants which are found in India. So 6% of the world's flowering plants are found in India. And we have about 90,000 species of animals and a variety of fishes. Now, what is natural vegetation? If you have to define what is natural vegetation, it refers to a plant community which has grown naturally without human aid and has been left undisturbed by human for a long time, and this is also termed as virgin vegetation. Now children, cultivated crops like wheat, rice, mangoes, oranges, they form a part of vegetation, but they are not natural vegetation. The natural vegetation, or which we also term it as virgin vegetation, okay, which are purely Indian, that means they are grown only in India, are known as endemic or indigenous species. Now plant species which come from outside India are called as exotic plants. So children, vegetation which is purely Indian is called as endemic indigenous, and plants which come from outside India are called as exotic plants. Okay. Now we use the term flora and fauna. Now to remember what is flora, it is used to denote plants of a particular region or period. Now how do you remember with flora? FL for flower, okay, that means plants. And similarly there are variety of species of animals which are referred to as fauna. How do you remember this? Remember A in fauna, which means animal. Okay. Now, the question arises, what is the cause of such diversity in flora and fauna kingdom? How come we have so many kinds of plant species and animal species? Okay, what is the main reason behind this diversity? Now, the factors responsible for diversity are relief and climate. So, under relief, you see it is land and soil that affects the biodiversity, and climate, we have temperature, photoperiod, which means sunlight, and precipitation means rainfall. So, we'll look into the details of this. First, we look into relief, that is land and soil. So as I told you, relief is the first factor for the biodiversity. Under relief, we have land and soil, and we learn how land and soil affect the biodiversity of both plants and animals. Now children, land affects the natural vegetation directly and indirectly. Do you expect the same type of vegetation in mountains, in plateaus, plain areas, dry and wet regions? No, isn't it? Vegetation will differ. The nature of the land influences the type of vegetation. Okay, the fertile, in the plain we'll have fertile land, so it will be more of agriculture and more crops will be grown. The undulating and the rough lands, you can see what will grow there. Okay, what will grow there? There will be grasslands or woodlands. Okay, and because of so many trees will be growing there, which will give shelter to variety of wildlife. So depending on the land, we have different types of plants and animals living there. In the desert region, what kind of plants we'll have? We'll have cactus growing, and maybe there'll be camel, isn't it? Because they can survive the desert region. So land plays an important role in biodiversity. So soil is another factor for different types of biodiversities. We have different kinds of soil here. We have black soil, red soil, sandy soil, and clay soil. So these different types of soil provide basis for different types of vegetation. The sandy soil of the desert supports cactus and thorny bushes, while the wet, where there is wetlands, marshy and delta soil, okay, they support mangroves and deltic vegetation. The hill slopes with some depth of soil have conical trees like a cone. Okay, now after relief we have seen land and soil which affect the biodiversity of a place. The second factor is climate, and under climate there is temperature, photoperiod which is sunlight, and precipitation which is rainfall. Let us see how this affects the biodiversity of a place. So temperature affects the vegetation and animal species of a place. If the temperature is low and there's snow all around, we'll have different kind of animal life there. Like we see penguins when there is cold and there's frozen ice, and even at higher altitudes when it's absolutely very cold, we'll find conical trees like conifers and firs. Now places where the temperature is high, we'll have desert-like climate, the animal life will be different. You can see camels are there, and what kind of vegetation, because there's little rainfall, so we'll have cactus-like plants growing there. So children, I told you temperature affects the type of vegetation and its growth. So if you see in the slopes of the Himalayas, the temperatures are very low here. Okay, so what kind of trees and plants you'll find? Mostly conical trees and firs here. And then you can see northeast, again it's in the hilly regions, temperature is also low there, so we'll have kind of tall trees growing there. And then if you come to the peninsular region, which has more than 950 meters, hills which are more than 915 meters, we'll have forest area there. Okay, so here in the peninsular region we'll have tropical vegetation. And what is tropical vegetation? Where there will be forested region, and tropical means between the two tropics, between Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. And since Tropic of Cancer passes through our country, yes, almost divides our country into equal halves, the southern part you'll see near the Deccan, all this will have lots and trees growing here. And then above the tropics we have subtropical temperate type of vegetation, where there'll be more bushes and shrubs growing there. and at the height above that it is alpine type of vegetation where the temperatures are very low, which is the conical kind of trees are found there. So this is a chart which shows the characteristics of vegetation on depending on the temperature. So if there is high temperature, we have tropical kind of vegetation, which is almost forested region, or the rainforest line, the tropical regions between the two tropics, Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, and there is no frost there. Then slightly above the tropics we have subtropical type of vegetations where there are bushes and shrubs are growing. Okay, and the average temperature here is between 7 degrees to 17 degrees, and January it goes up to minus 1 to minus 10 degrees. Okay, alpine at a height temperatures there are 7 degrees, in January it is below 1 degree, and so there is snow. So depending on the temperature we have these kinds of vegetation. High temperature we'll have tropical vegetation, which is the forest region, the subtropical where I told you were bushes and shrubs growing, then alpine are conical kind of trees and firs grow there. The next factor is photoperiod or sunlight. Now photoperiod refers to the duration of sunlight in a region, and all of us know that trees and plants grow faster in summer because we get a longer duration of sunlight. Days are longer, so we get more sunshine for a longer period. Now the factors that affect photoperiod or sunlight depends on the season. It also depends on latitude, altitude and duration of the day. Now season also affects the duration of sunlight. So you see in winters the days are smaller, so less amount of sunlight that we get. During rainy season again it rains, so sometimes there is hardly any sun. So season also affects the duration of sunlight, and due to that we have various kinds of biodiversity, various kinds of plants and species are found accordingly. Now all of us know that the direct rays of the sun falls on the equator, and then as we go above the equator the rays get slanting and slanting. So you remember that higher the latitude, the shorter is the day. So if the day is shorter, less amount of sunlight. Now children, why are the southern slopes in the Himalayan region covered with thick vegetation cover as compared to the northern slopes of the same hill? Yes, this is because the southern slopes get longer duration of sunlight, and that is why they have thick vegetation cover, whereas the northern slopes have a shorter duration of sunlight. That is why the vegetation cover is thin there. The third factor is precipitation, that is rainfall. Now children, areas of heavy rainfall have more dense vegetation as compared to areas of less rainfall. In India, almost the entire rainfall is brought in by the advancing southeast monsoons between June to September, and by the retreating northeast monsoons from October to December. Okay. Children, do you know why the western slopes of the Western Ghats are covered with thick forest and not the eastern slopes? This has less vegetation, and the western slope is covered with thick forest. Why is this so? This is because when the southwest monsoon winds strike the western slopes of the Western Ghats, they drop all the moisture on the western slopes. So there is a thick vegetation cover, lots of rainfall that they get. So thick forests are here, and by the time they cross over to the eastern slopes, now these clouds do not have that much of moisture, they are dry air, so little rainfall that they get. And that is the reason why there is less vegetation on the eastern slope, because this area lies in the rain shadow area or the leeward side of the mountain. The western slopes are on the windward side, they're carrying the monsoon winds, whereas the eastern slopes lie on the leeward side. It is also called as the rain shadow area. Now children, let us see the importance of forest and how forest affects us. You know, we depend on forest for our survival, right from the air we breathe to the wood we use. Apart from this, the forest also has other functions which are very, very useful for us. They modify the local climate. You can see in order I have written all the major points. Modify the local climate, control soil erosion, provide humus to soil, provide shelter to wildlife, regulate stream flow. They support industry and offer scenic beauty. Now let's look into all these points in a little more detail. Now forests modify local climate. How does this happen? Now though you see the forest have a thick cover of trees, you can see the dense trees, and they don't allow the full solar heat to reach the ground. Okay, this protects the surface from the full force of the solar radiation, and thus the heat and then light that is received are much reduced, and this reduces the temperature inside the forest. So the forest below remain cool inside. The forests play an important role in the purification of air. During the day, trees and plants absorb carbon dioxide for photosynthesis and give out oxygen. They help in reducing the carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases in the environment. Forest controls soil erosion. The roots of the trees in the forest bind the soil together and prevent it from getting washed off. And the tree cover in the forest slows down the wind speed and thus controls the wind force. Now these trees also draw moisture from the soil through their roots and spread it in the air through their leaves, and in addition, and this additional moisture triggers more precipitation or more rainfall. The forest provides humus to the soil. Now, they help in recycling the soil nutrients through the shedding of leaves and small branches and the death of animals. Okay, they get compressed and they form humus. Now, what is humus? It comprises of dead and decayed plants and animals which are very, very nutritious to the soil. During rainfall, the forest soil absorbs water and reduces the run of water flowing into the streams, and this slows down the speed of the stream and regulates the stream flow. Now, due to the dense forest and the trees grow close to each other, they provide a good home and shelter to wildlife. Now, the forest also support a number of industries and provide a lot of employment. They are the timber industries or paper industries where wood is required. Well, the forest also offers scenic beauty because of the huge vegetation and dense cover and variety of wildlife. India's natural vegetation has undergone many changes due to several factors. Now let us see what are the causes of the depletion of forest cover. Now first is growing demand for cultivated land to grow crops, so forests are being cut down. Then there are also forests are being cut down for the development of industries and mining. Other is urbanization, the growth of cities. We need to now cut down the trees and forests to make more buildings and housing for people. And the fourth one is overgrazing of pastures. Now when these animals with their hooves and then they graze around, they trample the plants, break the soil surface, and some of them eat up the leaves and the roots, so then the land loses its vegetation cover, which leads to soil erosion, and then it's of no use. That land has derived, the soil has derived of all its nutrients. So these are some of the reasons for the depletion of forest cover. Now the vegetation cover of India in large parts is no more natural. There are very few areas where we have natural vegetation growing. Most of them are cultivated. Let us see the regions which has natural vegetation in our country. Now the areas where natural vegetation is found is in the Himalayas. They are inaccessible, very difficult to go and get something from there because they are almost covered with snow and they are at a high altitude. Some of the natural vegetations are also found in the hilly regions of central India. And the third area where we find natural vegetation is Marusthali in Rajasthan, which is the desert region. Okay, so we see the vegetation in most of the areas have been modified at some places or replaced or degraded by humans. So let's recap. Where is the natural vegetation found? They are found in either in the Himalayas. You can see the Himalayas, the hilly regions of central India, and Marusthali, which is Rajasthan, the desert. Now the forest cover in India, according to the report in 2001, it was 20.55%, and in 2011 the forest cover in India was 21.05, so slight improvement. Okay. Now the most land under the forest cover is, you can see here they are marked in blue, is Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Maximum area under forest cover. Now the minimum area under forest cover, you can see, are marked again in blue. You can see it is Haryana, Punjab and Delhi. With this we conclude the first part of the chapter. Do wait for my next part. Till then, do view and subscribe. Thank you.